Listen, welcome to Environmental Coffee House. It's been a while since we've seen you. It's great to
Yes,
see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a long time. I think several months. So
Yes, too many. Well,
yeah,
let me quickly say hi to everybody. Kim, thank you for moderating Singing Ways here, and it sure is hot out. It's hotter in here. Is here. Bila is here. You know him as used to, the former Osama #5, Shalel, the man of many names. Scott Andrew, who said that. It's great to see all of you. We are really, really happy that you're here. So, all right, let's go for it.
yeah. So I just thought I'd come on. It's been a really long time. For many of you who follow me on Facebook on my Facebook weather page, you already know what was going on. But yeah, most of last fall I was dealing with my partner had some serious health problems, and I had to basically back away from everything. Even my PhD, I still did the work, but I had to really hunker down and focus on taking care of my partner and my son. And
Absolutely.
yeah, she was really sick, and my son needed a lot of help with stuff. So it was a lot going on. Yeah, did manage to pass my classes,
Wait.
amazingly.
I should find
Uh,
definitely if I could find the applause. Okay, he did. Yay!
yeah, yeah. I got. I mean, it wasn't always pretty. I mean, one required class, I just got a C in it. I just had to get a C, and then I got an A and a B in another class, a couple of classes. So I was able to squeak my way through, and it was challenging, but I had a lot of
Yeah.
support from my doctoral advisor, from friends and stuff. So it was from many of you guys that helped out. Many of you helped me out with money to help pay for daycare for my son. A lot of that money
Thank you,
went to
everyone.
daycare. Yeah, it went to
Thank you.
daycare expenses, went to rent, stuff like that. So yeah, it was very helpful. But yeah. So
We love
yeah,
you. You're a beautiful person. We love your family.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I love everyone out there too that helped me out and supported me and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, in terms of like what's been going on with me more recently, I've been having a lot of things going on in my program, um, going on with my program. So well, first off, I should let people know. I've told people this on the weather page on my Facebook weather page, but my graduate program is ending. The emergency management disaster science grad program is ending because of budget cuts. It's like, I mean, it's not the only program that's coming to an end. There's several that are being knocked out, including like geology and
Wow,
like,
what's going
yeah,
on in
like
North Dakota?
it's just not much funding. A lot of it has to do with COVID and decreases in enrollment, and I think it's happening in a lot of universities in a lot of the country. And so they're doing restructuring where they're merging colleges together, dropping
Oh yeah.
programs. Yeah, so I mean it's crazy.
Well, I
So
am a retiree of higher education, so yeah, research. So I
yeah,
know. I've seen the
yeah,
changes at my institution, although I'm not there happily
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I will be the there's two of us PhD students left, because a couple others dropped out of the program or moved to
No
another department.
kidding.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
Wow.
it just doesn't isn't a good fit, or they didn't cut it or whatever. Um, but one of them is graduating. Should be graduating, I think, in the next couple months, for May
Okay.
graduation,
That's
and then I'll
good.
be the last PhD student out of the program.
So will they
So I'll
give
be
you a plaque on the wall? The last
probably,
PhD student on the
yeah,
program. You should have
probably
a
not.
plaque. Damn them. Well, you
Yeah,
never know. I mean, times change and academia changes, and who knows? There might be a need again. And I mean, it's a good program. I looked over the whole website and what you're doing. It's right now, emergency management and disaster science is the place to be. This is what's happening. We're having
yeah,
disasters after disasters, emergencies after emergencies. You're going to be extremely uh, sought after.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
you will.
Unfortunately, I wish the school the university would have realized the importance of that program. And I mean,
Short sighted.
my 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 advisor, my current advisor, is actually leaving the university because she's invested like so much of her time and life into NDSU, North Dakota State University, and the program there. I mean, she got her master's from there, her doctorate from there, became a professor there, became the department chair, spent all this time trying to bring in more people, make more scholars, and then they just cut it in a year. They just said no, no more. So I mean, it's just very disappointing for her, disappointing for me. Even though I'll be able to complete the program,
Yeah, thank gosh.
it's hard. It's hard to see it disappear because I've had an interest in NDSU for a good like most of this decade. I've spent possibly thinking about going there, and then I finally decided to go there, and I was the last one of the last people to get into the program. Yeah,
And then they
yeah,
should can it. But
yeah. And they
at
can
least
it.
they didn't say to you, find yourself a different university, because that would have really stunk. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
are, you're holding up the rear,
yeah,
the
yeah,
trailblazer at the end. But I do think it's going to pay off all this hard work and all the stress you've been through. I personally, I mean, after all these years we've been together on this channel, I'm so proud of you. I'm so gosh darn proud of you. So, and everybody should be proud of you. You're our Nick. We love you.
yeah.
So,
Thank you. But
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, there's good things going on right now. I'm in my last semester of coursework right now for the PhD program, so I'm taking two more courses, and then I'm doing an internship with the National Weather Service office in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Doing some social science related projects for them, and then I also applied for a job as a student trainee for the national headquarters, the National Weather Service national headquarters in Maryland. I could do that
Good.
via telework, do it
Oh,
remotely,
great.
so I wouldn't have to travel to Maryland, and then I could do that.
Great.
And yeah, I that interview is on Monday, so wish me luck on that.
Yeah, we
um,
do. We do. So
yeah,
basically, there's opportunity at the end of the world for,
yeah,
for disaster people. And yeah, actually, there's somebody here that says that they met with disaster manager interns with Red Cross helping her do her field work. That's Jackie. Jobs are everywhere from orgs like ARC to county emergency management. And she's been on our show. Jackie Heinel,
yeah.
she's our soil sample, my
Hmm.
buddy. So yeah, I mean, you picked the right field. Plus, you're smart and you have a heart and you're empathetic.
Yeah,
Very.
yeah, I, and my path has taken me to NOAA and the Weather Service, and I mean, I've been trying to get the credentials to be a part of the National Weather Service since the late 2000s. I mean, I turned 39 in May, so I've been around a little while compared to a lot of the other students that I'm around who are younger than me. So I've been wanting to be in the weather service since the late 2000s, and I always imagined I'd be a general forecaster for the weather service
Sure.
and be a meteorologist for the government. But this opportunity gives me a chance to be as an emergency management scholar and practitioner, social science practitioner, have the opportunity to actually work for the Weather Service in a different capacity, doing a little bit more related things, maybe related to improving their warnings, for weather events and watches and warnings and
Okay.
forecast products that help communicate weather information and things like that. Understanding how people understand that stuff and research that and improve the products that the Weather Service produces, so that hopefully people will have a better chance and better opportunity to actually respond to weather events in a way that's efficient, appropriate, and effective. So yeah,
Good, good. Well,
yeah.
everybody's forcing climate info is here from Sweden, and
Hmm.
Jean is here from Costa Rica, and Christopher Spavins is here from Canada, and Bibi, she just said her husband is going to get a job at Rutgers teaching water conservation. He's really excited.
Oh,
So
nice.
we've got a very motivated group, and this is great. And you're one of the people that has motivated us, Nicholas, as we
Yeah,
watch this. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, even though the things look um, bleak for the world in terms of climate and things just don't seem to be going the way they should be going, the direction that we would want them to go. Um,
Hi,
there's
Elliot.
always
You see that Elliot's here from
yeah,
Farked Santa Barbara? Oh,
yeah,
God. We're all on the same Twitter feed together. So, yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
if
you're
he's only
fine.
there for a minute, I just thought Sir Elliot needs to have, recognition, right? He's
Yes.
the Twitter guy, right? Okay.
Hmm.
All right. So, now that I so
Yeah.
rudely interrupt you.
No, you're fine. And so even though things are not going the way that we would like them to be going, there's
No.
still lots of opportunities to do the things that are necessary to help people in the environment and um, try to live as comfortably as possible and avoid disaster, reduce risk, and to people, and do all those things that can be done to help people. And um, you know, even if you believe that the world may be on a path or is on a path towards the ultimate catastrophe, which might be our extinction if we don't if we find no other options to save ourselves.
Right.
So yeah, so that's why I do what I do. I mean, that's why I wanted to be a meteorologist, was because I wanted to help people. That's why I wanted to do emergency management, because I wanted to help people. So
And I think it's beautiful. Well, I could say that all night. Yes, it is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, and it makes us happy. So, where would you like to go next?
yeah,
It's your
yeah.
show.
Yes. So maybe you could. I know there's been a couple topics that have popped up a lot in my Facebook weather page that have come up a lot, and like on Twitter and stuff like that. One is discussing El Nino, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and then the other one, it was obviously the recent IPCC report. So maybe we can just talk a little bit about El Nino first.
Absolutely.
So for people that don't know, the El Nino Southern Oscillation is this cyclic pattern that occurs in the tropical Pacific, where you have alternating conditions between warming waters of the Eastern Pacific and a decrease in um, trade winds, easterly trade winds, and a warming of waters, anomalously warm waters in the Eastern
Mm,
Pacific and Central Pacific. Yeah, that's the El Nino condition.
mm-hmm.
And then you can get La Nina, which is the opposite, where you get strengthening of the trade winds and a upwelling of cold water from the deep ocean along the Pacific coast of South America, Central America, and you get abnormally cold waters across the Central and Eastern Pacific, and these things alter climate conditions across the world. During uh, La Nina, for example, you can get, um, or during El Nino, for example, you can get
Mm-hmm.
increased rainfall in the Eastern Pacific and in South America, parts of South America, and then you get very dry conditions out in the Western Pacific, and then that pattern reverses during La Nina. So you get these changes that these hemispheric and even global changes in weather patterns caused by El Nino and La Nina. So right now, um, we're in a what they call Enso neutral
Right.
situation where we're sort of in between states of La Nina, El Nino. We were in, I believe, it was a triple dip, what they call a triple El Nino
Yeah,
for,
triple dip. That's
yeah,
what they were
yeah,
talking about. Everybody was
yeah,
talking
for,
about it.
yeah, for, it's been several years we've dealt with El Nino condition or La Nina conditions. Very unusual to get three La Ninas in a row. And now we finally have gone neutral where we're over, at least over the current term, short term, things are relatively neutral. But if you want to show that graphic that shows the probabilities,
Okay.
yeah, you can bring
I
that up.
have one question. Yeah,
Yeah.
also, should we all be petrified of El Nino?
Well, I mean, El
A
Nino,
lot of us are.
yeah, I mean, El Nino doesn't help with the effects of climate change because obviously this anomalously large body of anomalously warm water ends up typically causes the whole planet's temperature to spike a bit above and accelerates can accelerate climate change in the short term. So yeah, you can see here the official NOAA Sea Climate Prediction Center ENSO probabilities. This was issued earlier this month. So you can see for February, March, April period, there's very high probability of neutral conditions. So that's
Hmm.
what we have right now. But you can see as we get more into the summer, JJA is June, July, August, and then ASO is August, September, October, and gradually towards October, November, December, these 3 monthly time periods, the probability of El Nino is increasing. So it suggests that if this predictive pattern keeps up, that we could be looking at the higher risk of a development of El Nino late in the summer, early in the fall, going into winter. And I mean, the effects of this can be dramatic. Obviously, it affects the global temperature.
Hmm.
It can affect, which can in turn affect sea ice extents and stuff like that in the Arctic. You get during El Nino, you get um, abnormally dry conditions in the Pacific Northwest and northwestern North America. And actually, if you want to show the next graphic
Hmm.
with the patterns, uh, you get this
Okay.
strong tropical jet stream in the December February pattern, a subtropical jet that produces abnormally wet conditions across the Sun Belt, so to speak, the southern U.S. from Southern California into Florida. And then you get very dry conditions. Drought develops out in the Western Pacific in places like the Philippines, Indonesia, and I think during the last one of the last big El Ninos, there was some big fires in Indonesia. If I remember correctly, back in the mid 2010s, um, from drought in that region, and of course it also gets drier in parts of Australia as well. So so you so I mean El Nino and La Nina really alter the climate patterns, and you spend you, the world spends more time in either La Nina or El Nino than it does necessarily in neutral conditions. Neutral is kind of transient; it's sort of short lived as the cyclic pressure changes in the Pacific induce these trade winds changes that then induce weaken or strengthen and El Nino or La Nina patterns, and so that's what you get. This is what you get with El Nino. You get very wet in the southern U.S., dry and warm in the northern U.S., and
what I'm
and
thinking.
and and you're actually kind of seeing sort of a preview of that potentially for California. I mean, California is getting hit by some big storms
Ooh.
um,
Yes, and so
recently.
we've been hearing from Elliot and everybody else that lives out there. Kelly was my guest a couple of weeks ago, who lives in Humboldt County, who does a show, an environmental show on KMUD, and she's been following and sending me all kinds of stuff. So it's been,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
Karen
mean,
Reese is here from California.
it's been wild there, especially in the heavy snow in the mountains. I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, I think people died in some of those
Yes.
areas. Yeah,
There
from the
were, yeah, they said that the deaths were, they didn't necessarily know if they were from the storm or from people shoveling, having heart attacks. Same thing
oh
like in the
yeah,
Buffalo storm in
yeah,
December, that big storm.
yeah,
And people died because they didn't have access or they had heart attacks. They couldn't get out. I mean, the horrible things are being stuck in a car. There's no reason that when you know that there's a snowstorm, that the county executive lets you go to work in the morning and then people couldn't get home. I mean, that was
yeah,
really short-sighted. That really pissed me off, but
yeah.
I think California was has been a little more prepared. What do you think?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, I've heard politicians, some I don't know if it's politicians or other leaders saying that they felt um, unprepared for the amount of snow that the high country received in California and dealt with that. I mean there was ample warning of the event, that's for sure. So this is a matter of having adequate having adequate understanding, grasping the situation. And unfortunately, this is kind of a tangent, but there's a lot of underfunded emergency management departments in this
Oh,
country. I mean, police and fire get all the money. Emergency management does not.
yeah. Well, you know
Yeah,
what? I have to do this then. If emergency management does not get the money, we're going to flush the emergency management system away and we need a new one.
yeah,
Gets the environmental coffee house flush of the day. Get some
yeah,
money over
yeah,
there. Take some money from the military, for God's sakes. Give it to
yeah,
emergency management. And you know what? As short sighted as it might be now, Nick, it's going to happen. It's going, and the
yeah,
insurance companies are, they're already calculating. They're already doing their actuarial numbers. They're already looking at what their losses are going to be and what their
yeah,
preparations are going to be. So
yeah. And
you're,
I mean, it's also overwhelming for some EMs because a lot of EMs, emergency managers, come from aren't necessarily like trained in emergency management from a holistic viewpoint. Like a lot of them come from police. Like there are some EMs are former police officers or they are former firefighters. Like
mm,
high end, administrators from fire departments. So their focus is very response oriented. They deal with definition of response is thing is um, dealing with events that are imminent, occurring, or just occurred, and and that's what their big focus is. That and maybe a little bit with preparedness as they understand it, which is like training and exercises, but dealing with um, like recovery stuff, you know, there's a struggle there to understand, how to outside of the administrative work and working with FEMA and stuff like that,
yeah,
how to actually deal with recovery. And I mean, that's not a knock on EMs. It's just like a reality of the culture that you're coming from. You're coming from
sure.
police, you're coming from fire department, and suddenly you're getting hit with all of this other stuff that you don't necessarily have experience with. So that's why you need more research, the research side, to connect with the practice of being an EM to try to help fill that gap and train people to in things related to recovery and mitigation, which is risk reduction work. Things like structural things like building dams and and things like that, and to more non-structural work like land use changes and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
working and facilitating that with other government departments. But I mean, it's it's hard to do. It's hard for an EM to spread their wings and expand their knowledge base and get more help and staff if they don't have the money to do it. And so that's a big problem in a lot of the parts of the country, and especially in rural counties. Rural counties will have like part-time EMs, that again come from police or come from the fire department. Then they do that work part-time. They don't do it full-time because they don't have the money in the county to do it.
That's something.
So
Always
yeah,
about the money. It's always about the goddamn money, and it's going to come home to roost. It already is. It already is. But
yeah,
I think people like you are going to be extremely, well, you are extremely valuable. But I mean, with your expertise and your PhD, you'll be able to, like you said, help others. I wanted to ask you before we moved on to another slide, how is the world of disproportionately underprivileged people doing in the emergency management paradigm? Are cities being looked at? I mean, where is it at? Cities and people that don't have any resources.
well, yeah. I mean, a lot of that again comes to funding for things like mitigation activities to either provide money to buy out housing that is in physically hazardous areas to
Yeah.
help people move away from physically hazardous areas that like right near a river or right near a canal or right near the ocean to give a buffer, you know, and or doing other things involving improved preparedness to help people be able to get out of hazardous areas right before an event. So there's mitigation to actually reduce risk. There's preparedness to have a state of readiness for an event, and then the response is hopefully the implementation of plans that were done during the preparedness phase for that event. And
That's what
so
I
actually
worry
helping
about.
people,
Yeah.
you know, like I mean, if you look at like New Orleans during Katrina, I mean
Mm-hmm.
Katrina was almost 20 years ago now, but it's
Yep.
still like seared into my mind. I mean, it's the event that actually got me interested in emergency management way back in 2005. I mean, I was 21 years old when Katrina hit, and I mean, I was watching it meteorologically. It was fascinating and scary event, but what scared me more was seeing all these people that didn't have the ability because of, I mean, the single biggest factor in when it comes to vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
is socioeconomics. Socioeconomic status is money. You know, I mean, and I mean, there's other lines, other intersections. Like the fact that people who are people of color, particularly Black,
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic, are on average poorer than their white counterparts. So a lot of people that are poor in these areas are also Black or Hispanic or people of other
I
underrepresented
know.
groups.
Totally
And
underrepresented.
I mean, in New Orleans, for example, you had a lot of people that simply could not afford to leave, didn't just have a car to
Mm-hmm.
just get up and leave, or a hotel to go to, or didn't have a social network that extended outside of the city to be able to go to someone else's house far away from New Orleans. There was just a lot of things that were going wrong for people. That wasn't their fault. That's just the
Right.
state of the
And
society.
That happened
and
in Houston as
yeah,
well.
it happened in Houston with Harvey.
It
Yeah,
happens
yeah,
with all the big ones, and people in these communities, they need to be taught to be prepared. They need access to what others have access, backup batteries or supplies. It should be a huge program that governments are now planning for, but they're not. They want to
yeah. And I
plan,
mean,
it's planned for after it happens.
yeah, and I mean the single biggest factor when it comes to preparedness is the ability to um, for individuals and households is the ability to remove oneself from the hazard agent. So be able to move away from the hazard. I mean that's like the most basic thing, but it's something we take for granted if you have the
Hmm.
money to do it, if you
Yeah,
have the physical or
exactly.
mental health to do it. If your physical or mental health is suffering, if your resources are lacking, your ability to if say you're old or elderly, say you're
Yeah,
poor, say
all of
your
the above.
ability to the ability to remove yourself from the hazard zone, to evacuate or to even have a shelter or anything
Yeah,
for a tornado or whatever is limited or non-existent. And so that's where you need others, you need government, you need others, some collective help to assist you in be able to remove yourself from the hazard so that
right.
you don't so the consequences. And so you had all of these people in New Orleans, for example, in 2005 that were just left behind, stuck, and had to go to the Superdome or the convention center to try to survive. And I mean, again, I mean, Katrina was like the most significant example of this, but this happens in many
I
disasters,
mean,
including
it
ones
just
that don't
happened
make the
in,
headline
yeah,
news.
in December. Just
And
happened in Buffalo.
and in
Sorry, but
and
it
in
did.
and in different parts of the world, in other
Oh,
countries, this is what happens too. You have underprivileged ethnic groups or other people that suffer consequences. I mean, I remember reading a peer reviewed paper on evacuation behavior of people in Bangladesh, I believe, during a cyclone,
hmm,
and a lot of um, the pattern was a lot of the men stayed behind at their houses because they wanted to try to protect the home from the storm surge, and they were worried about looting of their homes after the storm passed, which is a common fear. But actually, this is sort of a side note. Looting doesn't actually happen very often after a disaster. This is human behavior. Studies have shown
no,
that a
but the
lot of looting
media
does
will,
happen.
they'll
The
show,
media will play it up.
yeah, they'll play it
Play it up.
up and make it
Or they'll
horrible
or they'll or they'll
headlines.
or they'll say people that are just getting like essential resources are looting.
Jeez.
So yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
looting doesn't
know.
really happen very much. But the women, a lot of them refuse to go to the shelters because the government culturally didn't appreciate the fact that in that culture, don't a lot of women don't want to be in the same space as the men. You need a separate space for the women to feel safe. You know, and so they didn't have separate spaces, and they also didn't have good sanitation in the buildings for the facilities. So a lot of people had evacuation resistance to evacuating
Sure.
zone. So you have to appreciate the human needs of people, both like related to their resources, related to culture, related to all these things that go into people being able to make those important decisions to if they have the ability to remove themselves from the hazard, and they have to have the ability to do that too.
Yeah,
So
I thought it was very important to talk about that because I mean, even here, what I'm looking at, they're saying high winds, we're going to get some crazy winds, 60 whatever miles an hour. I don't know, where would I go? I think Well,
Yeah, if the
I mean,
power went out or whatever.
well, the
Yeah.
power goes out. I've had that happen, and that's
Mhm.
I can deal with it. I have a wood stove. I don't have any big backup system, but I
Mhm.
deal with it. Okay. The problem is that you think about somebody that's not in my position that. Even in rural America is not prepared either, except for down south where people are starting to get hip and getting tornado shelters where they never thought they'd have to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, now that's
I
big
mean, the South is
business.
yeah, the South is quite vulnerable because of a lot of mobile home parks and stuff down there in the rural
Uh-huh.
areas. I mean, and of course, there the problem is that with that is the protection um, for people in living in mobile home parks depends on the um, the forward thinking of the mobile home park owners, the landowners that own the
Right.
land that the mobile parks sit on, to actually build a shelter or provide shelter for people in case of a tornado.
Oh, wouldn't
So
that be novel?
yeah, so unless the law tells these landowners build shelters for your residents or you have or they're forward thinking and do it themselves, then a lot of times they don't get built, and so people are left
Hmm.
to make the weather service says head underground or go to the lowest floors, get out of mobile homes. Well, what do you do when you're in a mobile home park? You don't have a shelter where you either have to like
Go to the
decide to like
school
yeah,
if you
either have to
can.
up yeah, you either have to uproot your whole day and risk going somewhere and risk nothing happening, which could affect your employment, could affect other things, or you stay and hope that tornado misses you, or that you go outside and maybe get into a ditch or something and hope that the mobile home doesn't roll over you or something. I mean, all sorts of crazy scenarios that people have to think about in response to an event because they aren't provided this major contextual aspect is the government or the mobile home landowners providing you the shelter that you can't necessarily afford on your own or do to your home to protect yourself.
Right.
So, so I mean, preparedness was emergency management is like a multi-layer thing. The ability
Very
to deal
much.
with a disaster requires all hands. It requires the individual and a household to provide some responsibility over themselves. But it's not. But in this country, we spend way too much time thinking about like talking about individual responsibility. It's also the responsibility of the government to actually be doing things with the money that they get from taxpayers.
You think?
Yeah,
My goodness.
yeah.
I never would have known. Psh.
Yeah, and using that money appropriately instead of spending it ridiculously on the military or on other things that all right,
Military's
fine.
out of
Yeah,
control.
yeah. I mean, or even on police and fire, which is important
And
to a
that's
society.
out
You
of
need some police and
control.
fire, but you don't need so much money spent on them when you can spend it on emergency management resources. So
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh. I think you have got something there.
yeah.
So, would you like to move on and
Yeah,
we
yeah. I
can
actually got a chance
I
to talk
really,
about.
really did want to hear what your thoughts were on this. Environmental racism is a big thing,
Mhm.
and it is not going to change. I don't think. At least right away. And of
Yeah,
course, then we have a migrating climate migration crisis that's going to happen.
yeah. Unfortunately, it might get worse with that. It might have,
It's going to get worse.
yeah, because you might have, you'll have people from Mexico and from the Central and South America coming up north, and what is America going to do with those populations of people? Same thing with Europe and
I know.
Africans populations. So yeah, or China and India.
It's a
Yeah,
conundrum.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is. But you know what?
yeah.
You're taking one piece of it and you're going to provide information, comfort, help, empathy to those who need it. And I'm sure you'll do things on the front lines besides pedantically, and
Yeah.
educationally. All right,
Hmm.
so where are we going next? Adverse
Um,
impacts?
yeah, we could talk a little bit about the IPCC report.
All
Um,
right.
so so yeah, they did this synthesis report. I didn't read the summary for policymakers, but I mean, I from what I heard from other experts out there, it's pretty much says what we already know. Climate change is getting worse. Emissions are increasing still. Um, this document or this figure, which is obviously you couldn't blow it up for this, but you can. Well, that actually helps a little bit, but yeah, adverse impacts from human-caused climate change, continue to intensify. So, observed changes have been to, let me. I'm gonna blow it up on my
I'm
computer
sorry,
so I can
guys,
look
that
at it.
it's not the best graphic. I downloaded it
Yeah,
twice, and it's a weird one.
but yeah, if for folks that are on their computers right now or want to look after the show, you can just go search for the IPCC six report or synthesis
Link
report,
in the
and
shows. It'll
yeah,
be
and
in
it'll
the
be
show
in
notes.
there.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, water availability and food production is seeing adverse impacts. Various health and well-being metrics like infectious disease, heat, malnutrition, harm to wildlife. Human mental health is seeing adverse impacts. This is at the global level, so a global scale. This is what's being seen in the research, and displacement of people, because of climate change. Cities and settlements, so a lot increased inland flooding
Mm.
and damage, floods, storm-induced damage in coastal areas, um, damages to infrastructure, and actually flooding like that. Like I took one of my courses last semester in mitigation
Mm-hmm.
theory, um, and I had to actually look at. We actually each of us
Oh.
had to look at an individual country um,
Oh.
um, outside the U.S. So an individual country, and actually look at some of the things that they're doing in the realm of mitigation.
Yeah.
Um, and and the biggest thing that kind of comes up is flooding, because it's
Really?
yeah, because it's ever present.
Wow.
I mean, water is everywhere. So I mean, you're dealing with coastal flooding, inland flooding, flooding from storms, river flooding. So the focus on in the mitigation space is like really is always like heavily into flooding. Like our professor asked us to like look at find the like three biggest or most significant like hazards that a country identifies, and most countries haven't really identified like key hazards like they
Mm-hmm.
should, but their focus is a lot of times on flooding. And there might be like specific things that are specific to the country, like Japan looks at earthquakes a lot
Sure.
too. Um, um, or for example, or I think someone in the class looked at Nepal, and I think they looked at earthquakes too, a lot. But a lot of what we saw was flooding, flooding stuff.
I mean, flooding in California,
Yeah.
like I've never witnessed in my life. And I've watched, and Karen Reese, who's here, she said that there was a lot of water. And we were so worried, what
Hmm.
was it last year, about the fires? About the
Yeah.
fires. I mean, the panic. How much do you deal with fire in your studies?
Well, yeah, I mean, fire. Yeah, there's a lot of like strategies for trying to deal with fire. Obviously, control burns and fire breaks, not and trying to clean up certain like highly flammable invasive species, plant species, things like that. So,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot related to fire too. But
How
yeah.
about nuclear power plants and disaster management around that? Is that specialized to the industry, or are there any kind of courses you were able to take on that?
Well, that might be more of a um, uh, yeah, crisis management issue
Okay.
where I mean, I'm taking a course in business continuity and crisis management right now, actually learning about like how like it's not purely a emergency management class. It like deals with aspects of uh like business response. So like actually like how do you like do PR for as a business
All
in
right.
response to an event and things like that. It's
Right.
very interesting. It's not really my cup of tea, but I mean for some
No, it
people that are
doesn't have
interested
to
in
be.
business economy, yeah,
No, it doesn't have to
yeah,
be your cup of tea. All right. So,
yeah,
how about we look at this one? Here's a meaty one.
yeah, yeah. So this is let me go to that one myself. There we go. So yeah, this is every increment of global warming and regional changes in mean climate extremes become more widespread and pronounced. So yeah, basically this talks about the rise in global temperature in which you would see globally for the annual hottest day temperature change compared to the 1850 to 1900 average. Um, the annual mean total column soil moisture change, so changes in soil moisture, and then annual wettest day precipitation change. So this is kind of looking at the extremes, so the hottest day and the wettest day, and then also the soil moisture, and you can see that once you start, I mean, 2 degrees, you start to see more dramatic changes in in the hottest days of the year, pretty much across the planet. I mean, particularly in the mid latitudes, um, in the polar regions. Once you get to 2 degrees, 3 degrees, it has a at the top. It has a note saying the last time global surface temperature was sustained at or above 2.5 degrees C was over 3 million years ago.
Wow.
So I mean, and this and right now the average global temperature for the last, and this is they do for climate change, they do decadal averages. So over a
Mm-hmm.
course of 10 years, um, relative to pre-industrial, or I guess technically early industrial, if we're looking at temperatures measured by thermometers. Um, um, the world for 2011 to 2020 is around 1.1 C warmer than the pre-industrial age or the early industrial age. So I mean, a world where the decadal average is around 1.5 is getting bad. 2C is getting very bad, and 3C is like a completely altered world. And I know based on the current emissions commitments that the world is focused on implementing over the next decade, that we're probably on a path towards 3 or 3.5 or C or so by supposedly by 2100. Now, I mean, obviously that doesn't account for certain you know feedbacks and other things that are hard to they're very hard to calculate explicitly in climate models. Both, I mean, climate models, um, they have they're not the same as meteorological models. Like meteorological models, you can get like high resolution on short time scales. Climate models deal with different equations and do things on long time scales. They're not designed to forecast the weather. They're forecast the average climate over time. And
Mm.
so there's certain things related to permafrost melt, sea ice melt, um, the loss of ice on the planet. Period. And soil, carbon changes that are hard to explicitly predict. They do something similar to um, um, meteorological models in that they use what they call parameterizations, which are put in to calculate to try to estimate
Mm.
certain values, like, oh, this may be like this by this time, at this time periods, but it's very hard to they're very hard to predict. So,
Very
I
hard.
mean, yeah. So I mean, but I mean, based on what we know or what we think we know, that's what they say: 3.5 C by 2100,
It's
which would be
insane.
disastrous.
It's
I mean, whether it have,
disastrous. It's gonna be
I mean, whether it
disastrous.
happens, I mean, whether it happens in 77 years or happens in 27 years, it's horrible. I've heard. And I mean, things like sea level rise could go exponential. I know that. I know there was a paper that came out, rather famous paper back in the mid to 2010s by
Hmm.
James Hansen that
Yes.
talked about sea level rise, and he he suggested the possibility that it could be more exponential. And I mean, you could have cities
Hmm.
flooding with 1 meter of sea level rise by 2050, which would be horrifying. I mean, that would pretty much drown out many cities
Horrifying.
globally. So I mean, there's a there's a there's enough that we know to say um, that it's horrible, but enough that we don't know in terms of timing, in terms of impact, to say, we should probably be doing something right this moment to try to avoid it so that we don't find out how fast things actually can go.
But Nick,
you
that
know,
would make sense.
yeah, yeah, that would make sense.
Of course.
Because I had a commenter on one of my Facebook. Uh, I think it was one of my recent Facebook posts on my Facebook weather page saying we need to act on climate change, and I looked at that and I just realized I've been talking about climate change on Facebook, like in my private Facebook, since since the early 2000s, early 2010s, and then on my Facebook weather page since like 2017, 2018, and I started becoming more well known around 2018, 2019 on the blogosphere and on
Sure.
Environmental Coffee House and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
And this
and I,
page.
and I yeah, and all I've heard is people say, politicians and head of the UN and the IPCC people, and everyone's saying we need to act. We have these solutions. We can do all this, and I know people bash the so-called solutions to climate change, but it's, even if
But
we assume that the solutions
yeah.
would work, nobody's nobody's really doing them.
No, and Nick, you know what, Nick?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but people are doing things. I mean,
Oh yeah,
Antonio
people are
was
doing
talking
things.
about it
Yeah.
the other night, but the thing about this not doing thing or people bash, we can't control if people do or what if the
Yeah.
markets,
Yeah.
business, if there's money to be made, there's going to be solutions proposed if there's
Yeah.
money to be
I mean,
made, because that's
yeah, and I mean
basically the
that's
bottom line.
yeah, I mean that's the thing, does just does climate saving the climate, trying to keep the climate from mutating into this state that we can't survive
Hmm.
in, and other species can't survive in, that we depend on for our survival, um worth the money, and what
Worth the
I
money.
see. Yeah, I mean that's
That's
what it comes down to,
insane. How could you
the
think
dollar
it's,
bill.
oh my gosh, worth
And
the
that's what it
money?
comes I mean that's what it comes down to. And I mean for all the, I know a lot of people bash like James Hansen and Michael Mann, but they've made one good point that they've made is
Hmm.
that they see governments doing things that demonstrate how serious they are about tackling the climate crisis. not talking about
Right.
individuals
Some
doing things.
governments.
I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about the governments that have taxpayer money at their disposal and
Mm-hmm.
law, the power of law at their disposal to alter things. And I mean, Hansen has talked about how basically the capitals of the world fund the oil industry through subsidies, but what is it, trillions of dollars, maybe at least billions of dollars
Oh, that
in subsidies.
if
I mean,
that
talking.
stopped, can
I
you
mean,
imagine?
yeah. I mean, the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and everybody, the capitals of the world, come to the climate conference and talk about, oh, we need to do these things. We're going to shake hands and commit to doing these things, and then the subsidies continue.
The subsidies continue. The
When you could do
company,
when you could do the subsidies on renewable resources that would help, that potentially could help reduce carbon emissions,
yeah,
the
and
amount of carbon emissions
look
versus, you know,
for ways that renewables do not need to mine the earth, do not need to
yeah,
conduct ecocidal, omnicidal, crazy things to go further. I mean, that's
yeah. I
where
mean,
the
I don't,
science should be, and
yeah,
academia actually should be much more in tune with this than private industries. But that's not how we roll in the United States. That's not how
yeah,
our capitalistic system rolls, anyway.
yeah. I mean, I don't want. I mean, I don't want. I don't want necessarily more um, cars on the road just because they're electric cars. I don't want more
Right.
wind farms that are at the expense of forests.
We
You
don't
know,
want business
you know,
as usual.
yeah, yeah. We don't want business as usual. So
No. All
yeah,
right. Well, we have one more. I believe we have. We did. Did we do this one yet?
yeah. We actually kind of talked
Okay.
about this, but we
And
can do it
well, then
real
I
quick.
think we're good. Yeah. And then we have
Yeah,
questions, and then we're hitting the hour mark already.
yeah, yeah. But
So why
yeah,
don't you
this is
go over this one really quickly?
yeah. I'll just do it briefly. So this is about limiting warming to 1.5 or 2C with rapid, immediate, most cases immediate greenhouse gas emission reductions. I mean, that's I mean, I
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. I mean, in among climate scientists, it's a blasphemy to say this, but I'm not a climate scientist. I'm a meteorologist who knows some stuff about climate. This isn't going
Yes,
to
you
happen.
do.
Yeah,
No, it's not. All right.
I mean,
Well,
the implemented policies are being the policies that are being implemented, and they show a warming of at least 3.2 C. So
so
medium
it's like
confidence in that. So it could be
magical
higher than that.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a little
yeah.
magical thinking.
So because we're at the brick wall right now. I mean, this is basically like something that should have been done in the 1970s, 1980s. You know,
Yes.
now
And
it's like a brick wall. You have to drop. You basically have to collapse the economy in order to accomplish these
well,
things.
that's what a lot of people talk about. They're waiting for the collapse so that some of these things could possibly be, you know, could be. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to put our little bit of question and answer music on. And everybody, if there's cues, let me go back and look from before earlier questions. Let's see. Um, Colinello said, throw out the rich and make the system respond to the people and the planet. Well, basically, what you were saying that the scales are so tipped, and they think they're going to survive, disasters in a bunker in New
Yeah.
Zealand. They're nuts.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
crazy.
It's not gonna happen.
Okay, here's a good one. This is Nadia. Well, oh, I see. Okay, well, we're almost done. Hi there. Will this El Nino cause a BOE in 2024? What do you think?
As far as like the Blue Ocean event, I don't really know. I mean, I don't know if anyone really knows, so I wouldn't be able to answer it.
Okay, that's good. That's honest. Karen said, "Hi there, everybody." Karen said, "I heard the polls are going to have a hand in climate change. Also, the polls."
Yeah, climate change
That's
will
always happened,
definitely.
though.
Yeah, that's always happened. So yeah, the
Okay.
poles, the change in the poles will definitely affect climate change because you'll have a reduction in albedo that warms the planet faster, and yeah,
How about
hmm
don't forget the heat at the bottom of the oceans?
yeah,
That's going
yeah,
to come
the
up.
buildup. Yeah.
All right. Hi, Bruce. We're happy to have you here, hon. Gary said Roger Hallam of XR was just released from jail in England, has an ankle monitor, good interview on YouTube. All right, we'll watch him. ECH should interview him, maybe. Why doesn't somebody write to him on my behalf? I would love to.
Yeah, that would
Hi,
be interesting.
Bruce. Hi, Cass. It's great to
Saying
see
hi.
you guys. All right. With fresh water from melting ice being added to the gyres and changing the salinity of the ocean, will that cause cooling once the currents begin to slow? Could be a
That might
chip.
cause. I know James Hansen kind of talked about the changes in the currents. I'm trying to remember the details in that paper, but yeah, the melting of ice in Greenland could affect cause some regional cooling, maybe in England and Britain,
Oh,
or at least slow the warming trend. So
okay.
maybe put it that way.
And
So
then people will
yeah,
say, "See, there's no global warming." Oh,
yeah, which happens every time it snows,
every
basically.
single time. I said that with Antonio the other day, which we are planning a state of the planet with the whole team. We will be. Are tornadoes occurring with greater frequency in the southeast than previously?
No, that's interesting because, like, yeah, tornadoes. There's been a trend in tornadoes occurring more in the southeast U.S. than in
Mm-hmm.
the southern plains
Mm-hmm.
recently,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not.
Today, they're following them. Ryan Hall's got his channel on. They're
Yeah,
following. They've got
yeah,
some cells brewing Mississippi and Arkansas.
yeah.
It's pretty scary.
I think that I think there's still some debate about how severe weather, so like severe convection, so tornadoes, hail, things like that, are being affected by climate change. Because it's very, because I mean, it's very spine scale, small scale, and complex. So it's
Uh-huh.
hard to deal with in climate models. Climate models can deal with maybe the ingredients for tornadoes and stuff like that. Um, but there have definitely been some trends in location, um, trends in location, trends in tornado tracks, like the length of the tornado tracks, and maybe a tornado size too. Maybe a increase in tornado size, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the records are for tornadoes are relatively recent in over the past like 30, 40 years. So
Mm-hmm.
how reliable all those records in the early time
Yeah.
period to be able
Okay.
to understand the trends is kind of a lot of controversy among meteorologists and climatologists about
Oh boy, you guys duking it out.
that.
All right, Gary's got a question. Does Nick see any need for people to organize for mutual aid outside of the catastrophe business as usual model? Wouldn't FEMA be reduced to serving only wealthy and powerful now? I think you touched on it a little. That's a good question, Gary.
Yeah, so
The catastrophe business as usual
catastrophe
model.
business as
That's
usual
good, Gary.
model.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean it. A lot of preparedness and might need to be done. Unfortunately, be done by individuals working together, and a lot of mitigation may need to be that needs to be done by the government. May need to be um, organized by people too. People that demand improved infrastructure to help be more resilient to hazard events, to keep them from being destroyed in hazard events, and also um, grassroots campaigns to either to do better with with mitigation to help improve outcomes in disasters so that they don't happen, or that if they happen, they're not as severe as they could have been.
Okay. Uh, let's see here. I wanted to go down to the wolf. An underwater Pacific Ocean volcano blew moisture into the stratosphere last year during its eruption. How will that impact weather? By the way, it blew my mind to hear that it reached the stratosphere.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. I can't remember what island that was on, but yeah, I remember that. That was a huge explosion. um, I've heard that the water might lead to temporary warming of the stratosphere, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm
All
not
right.
sure, but I don't know a lot about it. Yeah,
All
I'm not
right,
sure
let's
about that.
see. We'll move in here to because I know you've got to go. With more water added to the water cycle from the gyres. Oh, did I read this to you? Won't this water be added to the snow totals and in turn increase the caps eventually? That's I don't know.
Yeah,
Paul
let
was
me think about.
Yeah, Paul was on our show. He's a nuclear anti-nuclear expert. So, but he's also got trying to teach me about sun cycles and things, and I'm very slow at learning. So maybe we'll get back to you on that, Paul, because I see that yeah, Nick's got to go soon, but Nick is making some good observations about focus on mitigation. Key hazards are well known, but information, analysis, policy, and implementation are related to maintaining the illusion of status quo. Thank you, Gary.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, that was a good statement. All right, let's see, guys. Any more comments here that we're probably going to have to say goodnight,
Yeah,
but we'll
I would
do
add
this
that
again.
one thing I'd add with mitigation is a lot of times mitigation is based on like hazards that are like well known, and they're easy, relatively easy to maybe predict, because they recur or they're just common. So like you were talking about nuclear stuff for like
Mhm.
preparing for like nuclear disasters, like mitigation,
Mhm.
for example, for like train derailments, like we've seen the trail derailment in
Yes.
Ohio.
That's a
That stuff's
disaster.
Yeah, that stuff's really hard um, deal with because you don't know like necessarily like EMs are not told, at least not in this area. EMs are not told what's on the trains that go through Fargo every day.
Yeah.
We have trains that go through Fargo like dozens of times a day.
That's
Yeah,
insanity.
yeah,
I was shocked
yeah,
at that local people didn't know. All
yeah.
right. Well, listen, guys, we do have to go. I just wanted to show you the Facebook page and the Patreon if you'd like to support Nick. He's very busy. He's not doing as much with the Patreon, but you can always go there. The link will be in the show notes. I wanted to say thank you to everyone that is here for coming and seeing Nick. Actually, we are going to plan a Three Amigos show with Nick, Antonio, and Jim. Okay. Hopefully that'll come soon. Jennifer will be back, but not yet. So we will probably try to plan something like that. And then a State of the Planet with all of us because it's been a really long time.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
It
Yeah.
it yeah, I think so. I think it would really be nice. All right, well, everybody, thank you, Judy and Bila and Paul and Mike Olinger and Singing Way and Forcing Climate Info, Gary Hoover. You're all wonderful. We love you all. Thank you so very much. It's Friday night. We will be back Tuesday with a very interesting show, actually. I may just be hosting a different interviewer. Kelly, who you met, may be doing an interview with a water expert from California on and using our platform. So that's really cool. She's from KMUD in California, and I think this is going to be exciting. So everybody, thank you so much again. We love you. Nicholas, good luck with everything with school and keep it going. Keep it going. All right, guys.
All right. Bye.